an 18-year-old boy excited for his first solo ship voyage was publicly humiliated and forcibly removed from a cruise ship by a ship steward who saw his science project as a threat. The crew, feeling victorious, was preparing to leave the port, unaware of the disastrous mistake they had just made. However, at that moment, the boy's father, who was watching everything from a conference room overlooking the dock, made a single phone call. Within the next 60 seconds, every single ship of this cruise line across the country would be nailed to the spot by the only man with the power to do so. This was not just bad service. This was a disaster at the level of ending careers and confining the fleet to the port. The hum of the Port of Miami was a familiar symphony to Ethan Carter, but today it felt different. At 18, he was traveling unaccompanied for the first time. This was a journey to the Port of Los Angeles to present his project at the National Youth Innovators Summit. Hidden securely in his carry-on luggage was the Carter Atmospheric Sampler, a device he and his father had spent the last 6 months building together. It was a tangle of cables consisting of complex sensors, a small Raspberry Pi, and a global positioning system module, placed inside a reinforced transparent plastic enclosure. To Ethan, it was a masterpiece. To anyone else, it looked frighteningly complex. Ethan checked his cruise card for Royal Voyager Lines Voyage 404 for the 10th time. Boarding gate B23. He was early, exactly as his father had instructed. Be early, be polite, and send me a message when you board the ship. His father's voice echoed in his mind. His father, Dr. Marcus Carter, was completing a high-level symposium with the Coast Guard and port authorities in the same port complex. They were supposed to meet to grab a quick bite before embarking on their respective voyages. But his father's meeting had run long. His father had messaged saying, "I will watch you from the tower," making a small joke referring to his passion for aviation and maritime. Ethan, a lanky teenager wearing bright blue clothes with thoughtful eyes and a backpack that seemed too big for his frame, kept to himself. He watched the organized chaos at the gate with a tremor in his leg that was a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The boarding process began. A tired-looking boarding officer named Steve Johnson called for suite guests and diamond membership holders first. Then came the priority boarding call for families and unaccompanied minors. Ethan stood up, adjusted his backpack, and walked toward the boarding bridge. Steve said cruise card in a flat voice without looking up from his screen. Ethan handed the card over. Steve scanned it. Beep, unaccompanied minor. Ethan Carter, Steve announced, finally looking at him. Steve sized Ethan up, his gaze lingering on the boy's dark skin and his slightly worn-out backpack. "You know the rules, son. Stay in your stateroom or designated areas. Do not disturb the crew. Understood?" "Yes, sir. I will not disturb them," Ethan said quietly. With his heart thumping, he stepped onto the boarding bridge. Here it was starting. He found his seat in the main lounge on deck for a seat by the window. As passengers filed in, he carefully took his atmospheric sampler out of his backpack and placed it on his lap. He wanted to double-check the battery connections before putting the device away in his bag. He was lost in his own world, tightening a small screw when a shadow fell over him. "You cannot have that out." Ethan looked up. A senior ship steward with blonde hair tied in a tight bun and a name tag reading Karen Miller was staring at his device. Her smile was a thin line drawn with paint that did not reach her eyes. "Oh, sorry," Ethan said, struggling with the things in his hands. "This is just my science project. I was making sure it was off before putting it away. It is for a competition." "I do not care what it is for," Karen snapped, her voice drowning out the noise of the lounge. Many passengers turned and looked. "It looks complex. An unapproved device. Put it away immediately." "Okay, ma'am. I am putting it away," Ethan said, his cheeks burning. He felt the gaze of the passenger in the seat next to him, a woman who was now trying to distance herself from him significantly. He quickly put the device back into his bag and zipped it up. Karen said with a voice full of disdain, "All electronics, especially homemade ones, must be completely put away. Our procedures exist for a reason." She watched him with her arms crossed until the bag completely disappeared from sight. Then she turned her back and walked away, stamping her heels hard on the floor. Ethan sank into his seat, the excitement of his first solo ship voyage instantly evaporating, replaced by the hot sting of shame. He took out his telephone and sent a message to his father. I boarded the ship. Deck for lounge. An officer was really rude about my project. He looked at the message, then deleted the last part. His father had enough things to worry about. I boarded the ship. I love you. A minute later, his father replied, I love you too, son. Have a wonderful voyage. I am watching Voyage 404 from the operation monitor right now. We will talk when you arrive in Los Angeles. Ethan smiled, feeling a little better. He put his telephone into airplane mode and got ready for the voyage, trying to ignore the suspicious looks of the passenger next to him. The ship was full. The final doors were sealed, and the lounge began to hum with the sound of settling passengers. Ethan tried to shrink to become invisible. He just wanted to go to Los Angeles. Karen Miller was making her final check in the lounge, scanning with her eyes whether life jacket instructions were being followed. Her gaze got stuck on Ethan, and her eyes narrowed. She stopped and stood right in front of him. You again, she said. Ethan was startled. Ma'am, I need to see that device again, Karen said, her voice low and demanding. But I put it away. It is off, Ethan stammered while his heart beat against his ribs. I do not care. We do not know what it is. It could be a prohibited item. I am responsible for the safety of this lounge. It is not, I swear. It is for meteorology. It just measures air pressure and humidity. I can show the competition documents. Sir, Karen said, her voice rising, I will not argue with a child. Either you show me the device or I will have you and your bag thrown off this ship. The threat hung in the air, heavy and toxic. The passengers around them were now fully focused on the event. Some were recording with their telephones, some were muttering. A man in the back row complained, What is the problem? Karen turned to the lounge as if to gather support and announced, There is something in this boy's bag. He is not cooperating. I am. Ethan's voice cracked with panic. He was being accused in front of everyone. I will show you. I will show you. His hands trembling, he reached for his bag and carefully took out the atmospheric sampler. Karen pulled back as if he had taken out a snake. What is that? All those cables. Is that a timer? No, this is a Raspberry Pi. A computer, Ethan tried to explain as words spilled from his mouth. And this is a global positioning system module to track its location, while in the air. Meaning in the atmosphere. For my project, it is harmless. My father helped me make it. He knows everything. Your father. Karen laughed mockingly. So who is he? Let me guess. An electrician? Ethan's face flushed with a new kind of anger that cut through his fear. He is in the maritime sector. Ah, I am sure he is, Karen said with a scornful smirk. Everyone is an expert anyway. I am calling the captain. She turned her back and walked toward the bridge. Ethan froze with his project in his lap, the focus of more than 200 pairs of eyes. He felt like a criminal. The woman sitting in the seat opposite him, named Jessica Brooks, leaned forward. She was an off-duty journalist and her instincts had kicked in. Are you okay, son? The woman is crossing the line. I do not know what to do, Ethan whispered, his eyes filling up. Jessica advised, while secretly recording the interaction with a telephone in her lap. Do not say another word without your parents. A few minutes later, Karen returned. She was not alone. Behind her were the boarding officer, Steve Johnson, and 2 port security officers, pointing at Ethan as if he were a wanted criminal. Karen said, That is him. He possesses a prohibited device and did not comply with crew instructions. A potential security risk. 2 officers approached, one a burly man named Officer Davis, and the other a younger and hesitant Officer Lee. Son, Officer Davis said with a rumble coming from his throat. You need to take your belongings and come with us. But I did not do anything. Ethan cried. Tears were now streaming down his face. It is just a science project. Please, just call my father. His name is Marcus Carter. We will handle this in the terminal, Officer Lee said. His voice was a bit softer. Come on, you are keeping the ship waiting. No, please, Ethan pleaded. Take his bag. Karen ordered the officers with an expression of cold satisfaction on her face. Officer Davis reached out and snatched Ethan's backpack. Then he grabbed Ethan by the arm. Let us go, kid. Do not make this harder than it is. Ethan was lifted from his seat. His project, which was still in his other hand, hit the armrests. A small sensor cable snapped. My project? You broke it. Ethan sobbed. Walk, commanded Davis. As Ethan was led past her, Karen Miller stood with her arms crossed. The walk of shame was unbearable. Every passenger was staring. Some were angry, some fearful, some with pitying eyes. Ethan saw the woman by the window who moved away from him, shake her head and mutter, "Good riddance." As he was pushed onto the gangway, Ethan heard Karen's voice from the announcement system. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the small delay. We had to remove a non-compliant passenger. Thank you for your patience. We will be departing shortly. Ethan imagined the lounge exploding with relieved applause. The ship door behind him closed with a heavy, final thud. The boarding bridge was cold. The walk back to the gate was a blurred humiliation. Boarding Officer Steve Johnson was walking in front in an annoyed state. Officer Davis was keeping his hand tightly on Ethan's shoulder. In here, Steve said, pointing to a small windowless office behind the gate B23 counter. The office was painted a depressing corporate gray and smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Ethan was pushed onto a hard plastic chair. His backpack was thrown on the floor and his broken project was placed on the table between him and the officers. What is your name, son? Asked Officer Lee, taking out a notepad. Ethan Carter. And what is this thing? Asked Officer Davis, poking the atmospheric sampler with a pen. You said there is a global positioning system. Are you tracking the ship? No, it is not like that. It is not even on. For a weather balloon, I told her. Ethan's voice was hoarse from crying. I need to be on that ship. I am going to a competition. Please, you must take me back. Steve Johnson laughed, a harsh sound resembling a bark. That ship is untying the ropes right now, kid. You are not going anywhere. Not with this. He pointed at the project. Now, Officer Davis said, leaning in, his face inches away from Ethan's face. We will ask you again. Who are you working with? Why did you make this? Did someone ask you to bring this onto the ship? The implication was terrible. Ethan's mind was reeling. Working with someone I am 18 years old. I am a student. I made it with my father. Ah, yes, the sailor father, Davis mocked. What is his name? We need to call your family. Marcus Carter, Ethan said, wiping his nose on his arm. Dr. Marcus Carter. He is here at the port. He was in a meeting, huh? Steve Johnson rolled his eyes. A doctor, huh? Kid, you can stop with the stories. I am not lying, Ethan insisted. He really has an important job. Please just let me call him. Fine, said Officer Davis, pushing a landline telephone in front of him. You have the right to a single call. Keep it short. We need to figure out what to do with you. Ethan's hands were shaking so much he could barely dial the number. He took a deep breath, visualized the digits in his mind. It rang once, twice. Hello, Father. Ethan's voice broke. A new wave of tears choked him. Ethan, what happened? Your ship? It appears on the monitor that it is preparing to leave. Are you okay? Did you forget something? Marcus's voice was warm and worried. Father, they threw me off. Ethan sobbed. The ship's steward, her name was Karen. She said my project was a threat. She called security. Father, they are calling me a terrorist. They broke my sampler. I am in the security office at gate B23. There was a deadly silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, Ethan was terrified. His father was angry at him. When Marcus Carter spoke again, his voice was unrecognizable. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold, precise, and completely terrifying calmness. This was not just a voice carrying authority. It was authority itself. Ethan, listen to me very carefully, said Dr. Carter. I am at the Port Operations Center. I am looking at Gate B23 from a high-resolution camera right now. I can see the office door. Are you in that room? Yes, Father. Are the officers and the boarding officer there with you? Yes, 2 officers and the boarding officer, Steve. Good, said Dr. Carter. His voice was flat like a sheet of ice. I want you to put your telephone on speaker immediately. Okay, said Ethan, searching for the button. He pressed it. The small room filled with the tinny speaker sound of the telephone. My name is Dr. Marcus Carter. The voice boomed from the telephone, causing all 3 men to startle and look. I am Ethan's father. I am also the assistant administrator of the Federal Maritime Administration. I am using first-level security authority. No one will touch my son. No one will ask him another question. I am coming. I will be there in 3 minutes. And Officer Davis. Officer Davis, who had turned white, swallowed. Yes, sir. You and Mr. Johnson might want to call your own supervisors. Also, the voice paused. You will tell the captain of Royal Voyager Lines Voyage 404 to stop his engines and return to the dock immediately. Steve Johnson sneered with a spark of his old arrogance. Sir, I do not know who you are, but I do not have the authority to stop a ship that is leaving. The voice coming from the speaker was chilling to the bone. You do not, but I do. Tell your operation tower to check their monitors. Call sign Royal Voyager Lines 404 has just been given a mandatory remain in port order. By me. That ship is not going anywhere. See you in 2 minutes. The line went dead. The 3 men stared at the telephone. Officer Lee looked terrified. Officer Davis was confused. However, Steve Johnson looked furious. What kind of trick is this? He snarled at Ethan. Just then, his radio came to life with static. It was the voice of the Royal Voyager Line station manager, and she was screaming. Steve, what the hell is going on at your gate? I just received a call from the Port Authority Tower. Voyage 404 was ordered to return immediately. And God, Steve, all Royal Voyager Lines departures at the port are being stopped. One by one, all of them. What did you do? Steve Johnson's face turned ashen gray. He looked at the telephone, then at Ethan, then at the door as if he could run away from what was coming. Ethan just sat holding the broken cable of his project and waited for his father, the meeting doctor. Marcus Carter was at the Port Operations Center, a massive high-tech room on the top floor of the main terminal with a panoramic window overlooking the entire port area. This was the nerve center of the port. With him were the Port Operations Manager, Regional Security Chief, and Coast Guard Commander. They were discussing drone interception protocols. When Ethan's call came, Marcus had stepped into his private office, frowning with worry. As he listened to his son's story, his worry turned into a cold, controlled anger he had not felt for years. He was not just a father. He was one of the highest-ranking officials of the Federal Maritime Administration. His son, a teenager, had been profiled, accused, and thrown off a ship under the pretext of a fake security threat. This was not just bad service. This was a catastrophic failure of federal security protocols. After finishing the call with Ethan, he went back to the Port Operations Center. Other executives sensed the sudden change in the atmosphere and stopped talking. Gentlemen, I apologize, said Marcus, his voice dangerously calm. We have an active first-level security incident. A passenger on Royal Voyager Lines Voyage 404, my son, was illegally removed from the ship by crew member Karen Miller under a fake threat assessment. The crew and ground personnel are currently illegally detaining him in the Gate B security office. He walked to the main operation console. I have already issued a remain in port order for Voyage 404. Now, I want a full port exit ban for all Royal Voyager Lines call signs at this port, effective immediately. All departures, all arrivals. Nothing moves. I suspect a critical training error in security threat identifications, and I am not allowing even one of their ships to sail until I find out what happened. The Port Operations Center. Manager did not hesitate with his eyes wide open. Yes, sir. All Royal Voyager Lines traffic is being stopped, starting from now. Digital boards lit up with red wait commands. Jim, Marcus said to the security chief, "I am going to gate B23. I want you with me, and I want the unedited, raw, closed-circuit television footage of that gate." The boarding bridge and the interior lounge of 404 downloaded and sent to my office. Now the chief nodded. Having already grabbed his radio, Marcus Carter was moving through the port, not like a passenger, but like a commander. He was walking at a speed close to running, with his long coat flapping behind him. Port personnel saw him and the security chief following him and melted away from his path. He bypassed the main security checkpoint by showing his identity card and passed through a restricted, sterile corridor to reach Pier B in seconds. In the gray room, the radio on Steve Johnson's belt was a cacophony of panicked voices. "What do you mean, all of them? The Federal Maritime Administration administrator is here in person." "Something about gate B23. Officer Davis was sweating profusely. "Look, son," he stammered, trying to backpedal. "Maybe we started off on the wrong foot." The door of the office flew open, crashing against the wall. Dr. Marcus Carter stood in the doorway. He was a tall, imposing man wearing a perfectly tailored suit. His face was calm, but his eyes were blazing. He filled the entire doorway. Behind him stood the port security chief and two uniformed Port Authority officers. Marcus's eyes scanned the room, past the three stunned men, and stopped on his son. "Ethan," he said, his voice instantly softening. "Are you hurt?" "I am okay," whispered Ethan, standing up. "They broke my sampler." Marcus walked into the room. His gaze shifted to the broken project on the table. He gently took the snapped sensor cable in his hand. Then he turned very slowly to face the three men who had cornered his son. "I am Dr. Marcus Carter," he said. His voice was quiet but echoing in the small room. "Who is in charge here?" Steve Johnson, whose face was covered in sweat, raised a trembling hand. I am the boarding officer, sir." "Steve Johnson. I was just supporting my crew, and you," said Marcus to Davis. "Officer Davis, sir. Port security. We ... We were responding to a report of a suspicious device and a non-compliant passenger." "A suspicious device," repeated Marcus. He held the sampler up in the air. "This is a Raspberry Pi for Model B, a BME 680 environmental sensor, and a standard U-Blox global positioning system module. Total voltage 5 volts. This is, for all intents and purposes, a small computer less powerful than the telephone in your pocket. You, sir," he pointed at Steve, "were trained to identify explosives. You," he pointed at Davis, "are certified in threat assessment. And you," he pointed at Karen Miller, who had come hearing the commotion, "are trained to identify prohibited items. Which one of you," he challenged, "can show which part of this science project carries the nature of a threat?" Karen Miller, who had arrived with a self-righteous look ready to file her report, froze. The color drained from her face. "I, sir. It had cables and, a timer." "Timer?" Marcus's voice was sharp like a scalpel. "That is a digital clock display. Did you tie a ship to the port because an 18-year-old boy had a clock?" "He was being non-compliant," insisted Karen, her voice rising with panic. "He did not put it away." "Is this true, Ethan?" asked Marcus, without taking his eyes off Karen. "No, sir," said Ethan, his voice strengthening. "I put it away immediately. She came back later. She asked me to take it out in front of everyone. She yelled at me. She said I was a risk. And I have the video," said a new voice. Everyone turned. The journalist on the ship, Jessica Brooks, was standing at the door, her telephone in the air. "I have the entire interaction from her first approach to them dragging him off the ship. She was the aggressor. She profiled him. And you," she said to Karen, "you lied." Marcus looked at Jessica, then back at Karen. The ship's steward's face crumpled. "The last crumbs of her authority, her arrogance were shattered, Miss Miller," said Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, Officer Davis, you will all be taken to the Port Authority's central office, where you will give full written statements. Your security permits for this port are suspended, effective immediately." "You cannot do this," screeched Karen. "I work for the cruise company." Your authority. I am the Maritime Authority," roared Marcus, interrupting her. "I have the authority to inspect every cruise company, every crew member, and every square inch of this port. You falsified the security report. This is a federal crime. You did not just inconvenience a passenger. You mobilized a security team under false pretenses. You endangered the sterile area. And on what basis did you do this?" His age, his race, his backpack. He did not wait for an answer. He put his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Jim," he said to the security chief, "take them into custody. I am taking my son. I have a ship to deal with." The scene at gate B-23 was in a state of controlled chaos. The ship belonging to Voyage 404 was waiting at the dock, reconnected to the boarding bridge. The passengers who were about to leave were angry and confused, their faces pressed against the glass. At this gate and all other Royal Voyager Lines gates in the terminal, digital screens were giving a dark red delayed warning. Marcus Carter walked toward the operation desk with Ethan by his side. The station manager, a woman named Linda, was on the telephone, visibly shaking. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." "No, sir, I do not know." "Yes, him. He is here." She hung up the telephone and looked at Marcus with pure terror. "Dr. Carter, sir, I am Linda, the station manager. Our chief executive officer, Richard Sterling, is on his way. He is coming from Chicago. He can wait," said Marcus, his voice cutting through the woman's panic. "Right now, I want the captain of Voyage 404, Captain Anderson, to get off the ship and come to this office. I want Miss Miller's entire crew pulled and a new replacement crew found for this voyage." "Sir, replacement crew." "This could take hours," objected Linda. "It will take as long as it takes," said Marcus. "Your company's privilege to operate at this port is currently under review. Ours are the least of your problems." He turned to Ethan. "Son, can you sit here for a minute? The chief is sending someone to get your bags." "I am okay, Father," said Ethan. His voice was small. He was overwhelmed, but fear had been replaced by deep admiration. The captain of Voyage 404. A silver-haired veteran, Captain Anderson, entered the office with a grim face. "Dr. Carter, I was told there was a security breach." "My senior officer." "Your senior officer, Captain," said Marcus, "issued a fake threat report against an 18-year-old boy. She profiled him, humiliated him, and had him illegally thrown off your ship. Did you leave the bridge at any point to personally assess this threat?" The captain showed the decency to look ashamed. "No, sir, I trusted my crew's word." "That is the procedure. If they feel unsafe," countered Marcus, "or if they are unsafe. There is a difference. Your crew member, Miss Miller, acted with prejudice, not procedure. She turned a science project into a bomb threat. She failed. Your boarding officer, Mr. Johnson, failed. And you, Captain, by failing to verify a threat that tied up your ship, you also failed." "Sir," said the captain, his voice tense. "What is happening? What is happening?" said Marcus, picking up the operation telephone on the desk. He dialed a number. "I am Assistant Administrator Carter. Connect me to the National Operations Control Center in Warrington." Now there was a pause. The station manager, the captain, and the ground personnel gathering outside held their breath. "This is Carter," said Marcus to the telephone. "I am at the port of Miami, and I am conducting an emergency audit for Royal Voyager Lines call sign. I have detected numerous critical errors in security and threat assessment protocols stemming from flight and ground personnel. Effective immediately. I am issuing a temporary nationwide voyage stop order for all Royal Voyager Lines maritime operations." Station manager Linda made a small sound like she was choking. "All Royal Voyager Line ships currently in any port in the United States will not be allowed to depart. All Royal Voyager Line ships currently at sea will be diverted to the nearest destination and docked upon arrival. This order is in effect until their top management personally convinces me that their crews do not pose a danger to the public. That is all." He hung up the telephone. That the silence in the terminal was shattered. Within seconds, telephones began to ring at every Royal Voyager Lines gate. On the massive departure boards at the port, all of Royal Voyager Lines, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, London voyages turned from delayed to canceled. A passenger from Voyage 404 who had disembarked to see what was happening was filming. "What is happening?" he shouted. "Why are all voyages canceled?" Marcus turned to him. "Royal Voyager Lines is currently experiencing a fleet-wide stop due to critical failure to comply with federal security mandates. We are investigating." The passenger's jaw dropped. He and everyone else now understood. This was not a mechanical problem. This was a shutdown. Total panic began. Boarding officers were shouting into telephones. Passengers were shouting, demanding answers. The Royal Voyager Lines station manager looked like she was going to faint. Susan Vance, held by Officer Lee, watched the chaos she had unleashed. Her small problem with a non-compliant boy had just brought down a huge company. Her career had not just ended, her name had become infamous. Steve Johnson was sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. Officer Davis was stammering to the security chief. I was just following. I did not know." Karma was not a slow-burning fire. It was an explosion. It was the sound of a billion-dollar company coming to a halt. Because one of its employees could not see an 18-year-old boy as anything other than a threat. Marcus Carter put his arm around his son's shoulder. "Let us go, Ethan," he said with his calm voice in the middle of the storm. "We will go and fix your project, and then we will put you on another ship going to Los Angeles." The financial and logistical bleeding for Royal Voyager Lines was immediate and catastrophic. In the age of social media, news of a nationwide Federal Maritime Administration stop does not just leak, it floods. Journalist Jessica Brooks had already shared the 90-second video of Ethan being thrown off. The video was raw, shaky, and utterly damning. It showed Karen Miller's condescending smirk, Ethan's tear-streaked face. And the moment his project was broken by the officer, the video shared with the tags Royal Voyager Lines and Traveling While Black reached 1 million views before the original passengers of Voyage 404 had even retrieved their luggage. When Marcus and Ethan Carter were in a black car going to the hotel to rest, the shares of Royal Voyager Lines' parent company were in freefall. In less than an hour, it had dropped 14 points, wiping out approximately $800 million from its market value, the cruise. Company's chief executive officer, Richard Sterling, had diverted his own private jet to the port and landed just as the first wave of national news vehicles arrived. A man accustomed to corporate boardrooms, Sterling found himself in a frantic and humiliating rush through the terminal, only to be told that Dr. Carter was no longer at the facility and would meet with him when he saw fit. The stop lasted 8 hours. Hours. It was an unprecedented move for a non-mechanical failure. 8 hours passed with Royal Voyager Lines, ships waiting tied to the dock at every port from Seattle to Boston. 8 hours where cruise shifts expired. 8 hours where tens of thousands of furious passengers were rebooked on rival firms with expenses covered by Royal Voyager Lines. The cost was astronomical. Direct losses were estimated to be over $50 million. Not to mention the immeasurable damage to their brand. The reckoning for the individuals involved was swift and ruthless. Karen Miller and Steve Johnson were fired before the day was over. The internal investigation was a formality. Combined with video evidence, the sworn statements of Jessica Brooks and other passengers, it was undeniable. But it would not end there. The Federal Maritime Administration, led by Dr. Carter's office, filed a formal complaint to permanently revoke Karen Miller's ship personnel certificate on the grounds of willful endangerment and falsifying a security report. She would never work on a United States ship again. Officer Davis was suspended without pay pending a full review by the Port Authority. His history of aggressive escalation was now under intense scrutiny. Voyage 404's Captain Anderson was pulled ashore and sent for mandatory retraining on crew management and threat verification. His failure to question his crew's judgment had cost the company dearly. However, the real heavy karma was reserved for the company itself. Dr. Carter finally met with Chief Executive Officer Richard Sterling at 7 p.m. in a sterile Federal Maritime Administration conference room at the port. Sterling was apologetic, fawning, and looked desperate. Dr. Carter Marcus, I cannot apologize enough, began Sterling. This was a mistake. A despicable, isolated mistake. Marcus Carter was unimpressed. It was not isolated, Richard. Your crew member found the power in herself to do what she did. She saw a black boy with a complex device, and her training directed her not to ask, but to accuse. Your boarding officer did not de-escalate tension. He enabled it. Your security protocols are broken. Your corporate culture, it seems, is rotten. We will fix it, pleaded Sterling. We will mandate new trainings. Sensitivity, de-escalation. I will do whatever it takes. I will personally apologize to your son. We will cover his travel. We will cover his university expenses. You will not contact my son, said Marcus, his voice returning to that ice-cold calmness. This is no longer about my son. This is about the next child, the next passenger who does not look right to your crew. You cannot take back your company with an apology. You take it back with a consent decree. The stop was lifted at 10 p.m. but only after Richard Sterling signed a binding agreement with the Federal Maritime Administration. Royal Voyager Lines was forced to submit to 2-year federal supervision. They were ordered to retrain all 20,000 of their employees, from cabin stewards to baggage handlers, from top to bottom on racial bias, cultural sensitivity, and proper threat identification. The training program itself would be designed and approved by Dr. Carter's department. Additionally, the company was hit with the maximum federal fine allowed for multiple violations, which was a deep corporate humiliation even though it remained secondary to the stop costs. The story became a headline on every national channel. Washed ashore, how a boys' science project brought a cruise giant to its knees. Read the headlines. Karen Miller became the new face of corporate prejudice. Her name became a verb for arrogance. Royal Voyager Lines became a case study of what happens when prejudice is allowed to take the helm. 2 days later, Ethan Carter was standing at another gate. This time it was Pier C-44, the Liberty Seas Cruises ship. His atmospheric sampler was with him. Its broken cable had been carefully soldered by his father in the hotel room. The device was now covered with fragile stickers, and in Ethan's hand was a laminated file containing a full schematic, parts list, and the invitation letter from the Innovators Summit. He and his father were traveling to Los Angeles together. While waiting to board the ship, a man in a Liberty Seas uniform approached them. "Excuse me," said the man, smiling. "Is this the Carter atmospheric sampler?" Ethan blinked. He was surprised. Yes, sir. It is." The kind-faced man named Captain Mitchell chuckled. "I guessed so. I saw it on the news. My daughter is also a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics student. She is building a remote-controlled submarine. What you did, what you built, is incredible, son. And what your father did. Well, let us say most of us in the sector have been waiting for such a shakeup for a long time." He leaned in. "I wanted to say we are honored to have you on our ship today. And if it is suitable for you too, my second captain is a total weather nerd. Would you like to see the bridge before we set off? He would love to listen to your project." Ethan looked at his father. Marcus was smiling with eyes full of a pride that overshadowed all the anger of the last 2 days. "Go on, son," said Marcus. "You earned this." Ethan followed Captain Mitchell onto the ship, grinning from ear to ear. As they settled into their suite, which they were upgraded to by a quiet gesture from the company, Ethan looked out the window. He saw a transoceanic ship still standing parked at a distant dock, looking abandoned. It was like a sharp reminder of the chaos, a metal ghost paying the price for the sins of its crew. When a warm-hearted woman named Steward Maria came to them, she paused at Ethan's table. "Mr. Carter," she said to Ethan, "the captain told us you are the young scientist. We are very excited to see you among us. Can I bring you something before departure? Orange juice, a snack? And please let us know if you need anything for your project. We will take good care of it." "I am okay, "Thank you," said Ethan. His voice was clear and confident. "All right, just letting us know is enough," said the woman. Her smile was sincere and warm. "It is a pleasure to have you travel with us." As the ship left the dock and glided gracefully toward the ocean, Ethan felt the last remnants of the gray, cold security room slipping away. He was not a threat. He was not a problem. He was a passenger. He was a scientist. He was his father's son. Marcus Carter put his hand on his son's arm, and together they watched the clouds far above the world that tried to keep them on the ground for a while. The automated gates of the Port of Los Angeles opened, and the air hitting Ethan and Marcus was not the recycled coolness of a port, but the warm, palm-scented balm of Southern California. It felt like a different planet. The journey with Liberty Seas had passed in an aggressively wonderful normality. The kindness of the crew had been a powerful antidote. But Ethan still felt a residual tension in his shoulders, a lingering echo of that gray room. His father put his hand on his shoulder as if he sensed this while waiting for their rental car. "You know, son," said Marcus. His voice was quiet. "What happened there? It will probably stay with you for a while. A scar is not the same as a wound, but it is a reminder. Do not let this be a reminder of fear. Let it be a reminder of what you are made of. You were terrified, but you were brave. Even when they were disrespectful, you were respectful. I have never been so proud." Ethan nodded. The words were sinking in. "They almost broke my project, Father." "Almost," confirmed Marcus, tightening his grip. "But they could not break you and the project. We fixed it. Now it is stronger." He tapped the repaired casing. "Here is this solder point. Here is character." The first day of the National Youth Innovators Summit held at the Expanse of California Institute of Technology campus in Pasadena was a blur of nervous energy. The main hall was filled with the brightest young minds in the country. There were robots, fusion reactor models, artificial intelligence supported water purification systems, and gene splicing displays. For the first time, Ethan felt small, not because of an adult's prejudice, but because of the pure intelligence around him. He set up his station. The Carter atmospheric sampler was standing on a black-covered table under the spotlight. His poster detailing the schematics and research goals was hung behind him. As he plugged in his laptop, a group consisting of other contestants passed by him. "Hey," whispered a girl with bright green glasses. "That boy." "The boy who confined Royal Voyager Lines to the port," replied her friend. Ethan's stomach clenched. He was not a scientist. He was a news story. He tried to ignore them by focusing on aligning his project perfectly. "This is very cool," said the girl, walking toward his table. "I am Anna. This is your sampler, the one in the video. Can I see it?" Ethan blinked. He was surprised. "Oh, sure." Anna and her friends gathered around, not with suspicion, but with genuine, unfiltered curiosity. "Wow, you are using Pi4B. Do you use Python for data logging? How did you calibrate the BME 6080? I am experiencing drift on mine. Is that a U-Blocks module? Sweet. Your global positioning system acquisition speed must be super." For the next hour, Ethan was not the boy on the ship. He was the Pi guy. He was the atmosphere engineer. He was one of them. The tension that had been living on his shoulders since the port finally melted away completely. He was at home. His presentation was scheduled for the second day in front of a panel of 3 judges. Dr. Eris Thorne from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Professor Lena Kim from Caltech's Atmospheric Sciences Department, and Mr. David Chen, lead engineer from SpaceX. It was the most intimidating panel of the entire summit. When his name was read, Ethan walked to the podium. His heart was thumping. His father was sitting in the front row. His face was a perfect mask of calm support. "Good morning," began Ethan, his voice trembling. "My project is the Carter Atmospheric Sampler, a low-cost, high-altitude data collection device." Mr. Carter interrupted Dr. Thorne. He was a tough-looking man with a face that looked like it was carved from granite. Ethan froze. Here it was, the same as on the ship. "I read about your travel difficulties," said Dr. Thorne. His voice was flat. The entire room was silent. And as a former head of avionics, I feel an obligation to apologize. What you experienced was a failure of the highest level. It was a disgrace in the name of aviation, maritime, and science." Then he leaned forward. His eyes were shining with intensity. "However, your project will not be judged here based on newspaper headlines. It will be judged on its merit. And my colleagues and I," he pointed to the other judges, "are very interested in your data recording protocol, especially your method of insulating the pie against rapid temperature drops at high altitude. Please continue." It was as if a button had been pressed. Approval coming from this man, a giant in his field, was a wave of pure adrenaline. Ethan's fear disappeared, replaced by the passion he felt for his work. For 20 minutes, he did not just present. He taught. He explained how he wrote a special script to self-correct sensor drift, how he used a redesigned small thermal pack to preserve the integrity of the battery, and how the entire system was designed to cost under $200. "The goal?" said Ethan, his voice ringing with a newly gained confidence, "is not just to collect data. To make this technology accessible, a school in a rural area, a village in a developing country, they can build this. They can launch their own weather balloons and obtain data that will help their farmers or prepare them for storms. Science should not be just for those who can afford it. It should be for everyone." When he finished, there was a long silence. Ethan worried he had gone too far. Then Professor Kim began to applaud, slowly, deliberately. Then Dr. Thorne joined her and Mr. Chen. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was standing, applause echoing off the walls. Ethan looked at his father, who was wiping a tear from his eye, thousands of miles away. In a cramped apartment outside of New York, Karen Miller was on her couch surrounded by empty wine bottles. Her firing had been instant. The cancellation of her ship personnel certificate was permanent. She was not just unemployed. She was unemployable in the only sector she knew. Her telephone was overflowing with hateful messages coming from strangers. Her face was swollen and her eyes dull as she browsed channels when a local news segment caught her attention. "And in inspiring news, a local teenager is making headlines for the right reasons," said the announcer cheerfully. 14-year-old Ethan Carter from Queens, whom you might remember from the Royal Voyager Lines incident 2 weeks ago, just won the grand prize at the National Youth Innovators Summit in California. Karen's wineglass stopped halfway to her mouth. The screen switched to images from the award gala. Ethan was shaking hands with Dr. Thorne in a suit. "Young Mr. Carter," continued the announcer, "won $1 university scholarship and a prestigious summer internship at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Jet Propulsion Laboratory for the Carter Atmospheric Sampler." A close-up of the project appeared on the screen. The device, the threat she saw, was praised by judges as a revolutionary step in low-cost meteorological research. The camera turned to Ethan, holding a large, shining trophy. He was smiling, his face was bright and full of hope, standing next to his father. An anger so strong, hot, and acidic that it choked or knotted in Karen's throat. He was a hero. He was winning on television. And she was a nothing. She was the bad guy in his story. She had lost everything. He had won everything. With a scream belonging more to an animal than a human, Karen threw her wineglass at the television. The glass hit Ethan's smiling face and shattered. Red wine was dripping down the screen like blood. But the sound continued. The sound of applause coming from the gala filled her miserable, silent apartment. Karma was complete. It was not just that she had been punished. It was that he had magnificently, undeniably triumphed. On the same day, Royal Voyager Lines billionaire Chief Executive Officer Robert Sterling was sitting at the back of a windowless conference hall at the LaGuardia Airport Marriott Hotel. He was not in his usual Italian suit. He was wearing a polo neck t-shirt and fabric trousers as stated in the invitation. He was at a racial bias and de-escalation seminar under court-ordered Federal Maritime Administration supervision. And he was not alone. As per the consent decree, he was required to attend exactly the same training as newly hired stewards. ground crew, and baggage handlers. The instructor in front, a sharp-witted woman named M. Alvarez, pointed to the projection screen. Case Study 1, the Ethan Carter Incident. This, she said, as the video from Jessica Brooks' telephone played, is what we call catastrophic steps of corporate failure. Let us take it apart. Commanding a fleet of hundreds of ships, Richard Sterling slid further down in his chair, his face burning. Failure point A, initial assessment, continued Miss Alvarez, freezing the frame on Karen Miller's face. The crew member did not see a passenger with equipment. She saw a threat. Why? What biases were in play? Let us discuss. For the next 4 hours, Richard Sterling was forced to listen to his company's single greatest failure being taken apart, analyzed and used as the primary example of what not to do. He had to participate in role-playing exercises, pretend to be a passenger, pretend to be a steward. He who was accustomed to giving orders was now being told to check his privilege and re-examine assumptions by an instructor he could have hired and fired hundreds of times. This was Dr. Carter's true genius, he realized. The fines, the stock drop. These were just money. This was reprogramming. This was the reconstruction of his company's DNA, starting from him forcibly, humbly, and extremely painfully. Returning to the gala, the celebrations were ending. Ethan was standing with his father on a terrace overlooking the Caltech campus. The lights of Pasadena were flickering below. The heavy trophy was on a nearby table. "So," said Elijah, handing his son a ginger ale, "a National Aeronautics and Space Administration internship. Dr. Carter sounds nice." Ethan laughed. The sound was light and free. This is too much, Father." "It is," confirmed Marcus. "Everything you earned. You know, Ethan, that ship steward, what she did? She tried to put you in a box. She tried to tell you who you were. A threat, a problem, a non-compliant passenger." He pointed to the trophy. "You just showed her and the whole world exactly who you are. You are a scientist and inventor. You are my son. They did not run you aground, Ethan. They just," he smiled, "released you for a much, much higher altitude." Ethan looked at the night sky. He was not thinking about Karen Miller, that gray room, or the feeling of humiliation. He was thinking about the troposphere. He was thinking about his internship, the data he could collect, the future. The incident at the port was not the end of his story. It was just the turbulence before the rise. What happens when arrogance and prejudice are given a uniform and a little power? An 18-year-old boy's dream is almost shattered. A ship steward, Karen Miller, thought she was just applying the rules. She thought she was protecting her cabin. But what she was actually doing was judging a book by its cover. And in this case, that cover was a young black teenager with a project she was too ignorant to understand. She and the Royal Voyager Lines crew learned the hard way that the world is smaller than it looks. They did not just throw off a passenger. They threw off the son of the only man who could hold them and their entire billion-dollar company responsible. The karma they received was not just a canceled voyage. It was a nationwide stop, a stock market crash, and a federal order forcing a huge company to relearn the lesson of basic human decency. What do you think? Was the stopping of the entire fleet a justified reaction to the actions of a crew? Or was this a father using his power to get revenge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if you liked this story, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.